Computer Programming for Kids, Step 9. Change one label and make the other two disappear, and repurpose the progress bar. As a programmer, you want your users to feel like a Pomeranian basking in the sunlight. That is to say, all warm and fuzzy. The newsletter shows a painting of a Pomeranian and her pup. A painting which either I painted last night or was painted by Thomas Gainsborough in the 1700s. You decide which one you believe. So to help the users feel that way, we will let them see where they are as they go through the questions. To do that, we can use the same progress bar that is already on the form. When the first question is displayed, and then after each selection is made and the next button is clicked, we will assign the value property of the progress bar 10 more points than it previously had. That code will look like this. And then some code is displayed, assigning the value of the progress bar plus 10 to the value of the progress bar, increasing it by 10 each time. Here it is in context, so you know exactly where to put the new code. As is our custom, the new code is bolded, and then it shows the code block, the code snippet for the method named load next batch with the new code bolded inside of it. In plain English, what the new code is saying is, if the progress bar is less than full, that is, it is colorized all the way out to the right edge because its maximum value has been reached, run the following code. So in the opposite case, it is at maximum, fully colored in. The code does not run. When the code does run, the plain English for it is, add 10 to the current value property. If it's 10, make it 20. If it's 20, make it 30, etc. It will keep increasing until the maximum is reached of 100, at which point the code to increase it will no longer run. The reason why the amount the value is increased by is 10 is because there are 10 questions, and 100, the progress bar's maximum value divided by 10, the number of questions, is 10. But what if there were a different number of questions? Then the 10 would no longer be valid. If there were 20 questions, the value should be 5 instead of 10. If there were only 5 questions, the value should be 20 instead of 10. If there were 25 questions, the value should be 4 instead of 10, and so on. That being the case, we will prepare for possible future use of more or less than 10 questions by creating another variable and assigning it the appropriate value when the app starts up. For now, it will be assigned 10, effectively changing nothing in actual practice at present. But later it may change or vary. Stay tuned. So for now, we add the variable step amount, again an int. This is where it's declared in context. The new code is bolded and assigned a value. And then it shows the block of code with this new variable, int variable or integer variable named step amount with a value of 10 to start with. And so we now change the previous code to this. The change to the code is bolded, and it shows that instead of assigning the progress bar's value plus 10 to the progress bar value, it assigns progress bar value plus step amount, which is 10 at present. It can change later. That's why we made it a variable. We also need to change the labels above the progress bar. We'll update the first one to say question in of 10, first question 1 of 10, and question 2 of 10, etc. The other two labels we don't need for now, so we will simply make them temporarily invisible. Note, in, as in of 10 above, often stands for an integer variable, an unknown value. In fact, since question mode is the mode the app will be in when it starts, showing progress as opposed to showing the score, we will first make the change in the designer itself. To do so, follow these steps. 1. Select the Form1.cs Designer tab in Visual Studio. 2. Click on the first label above the left edge of the progress bar. Right now it has Whippersnapper as its text. 3. Change the text value to question 1 of 10. When you select a label, its text property should be highlighted in the Properties pane on the lower right corner in Visual Studio. 4. Select the next label to the right, the one which now says NYNO, N-Y-N-O. 5. Scroll down to the bottom of the Behavior section on the Properties pane to the Visible property and change it from true to false. 6. Do the same thing with the third Geezer label, that is, change the visible property to false. Note, even though you changed the second two labels from visible to invisible, that is, visible equals false, it will look no different on the form at design time when you're working on it. It's only at runtime, when you run the app, by selecting the F5 key or the Start Debugging menu item, that it will not be visible. If you want to prove this to yourself, go ahead and run it now. Running the app now, the app will look like this as it starts up. And it shows a screenshot of the radio buttons with none of them selected yet, a question 1 of 10 showing in the label, and 10% of the progress bar is filled. So those two labels are invisible now at runtime when running the app. But what about once we've reached the end? The label will say question 10 of 10. We want to switch from showing that, question 10 of 10, in that first label, to showing the user their score. When exactly do we change the text of the label, though? When the user makes a selection for the 10th question? That might seem logical at first, but what if the user changes their mind about their selection and selects a different one, thus changing their score? That is, they select one answer, but then change their mind and select another one. That might happen. So, we have to wait until we know that they have made their final selection. How do we know that? One way, remember, programming is partly an art form and depends on your own personality and preference as to how you will make your apps work, is to add another button which the user must click in order to see the score. Let's try that. We'll put a button on the opposite or left side of the next button and make it disabled to begin with. That is, it will be visible but not be available for clicking. Follow these steps to do that. 1. Drag a button control from the toolbox to the form and place it where indicated. 2. Make the button a little larger than its default size if you want to. Definitely make it wider, either by dragging on its sizing handle at the bottom right or by increasing its width property in Visual Studio's Properties pane. 3. Change the text property to Show Score. 4. Change its name property to Button Show Score, literally written BTN as an abbreviation of sorts, BTN Show Score. 5. Change its Enabled property within the Behavior category in the Properties pane to False. Note, although we haven't been consistently doing it yet, it's never a bad idea, and usually a good idea, to give your controls, especially things you write code for, such as buttons, a name. It makes your code easier to read. When you're looking at your code and you see BTN Show Score, it's much clearer to you what that button does than if it retained the default name Button 2 or some such. Your form should now look like this at design time. And the screenshot shows the new button, Show Score, opposite the next button. This is starting to get confusing, right? What a jumbled up mess. What a tangled web we have woven. When you look at it at design time, that is. That's because we see a mixture of what we'll show when we are in progress mode, the question 1 of 10 label, and what we will see when we are in score showing mode, the 9-0 and Geezer labels, and the Show Score button. So let's get straight in our minds just what is going to happen. First, the question 1 of 10 label will show, but not the 9-0 and Geezer labels. And the Show Score button will be disabled, visible but not clickable. After all 10 questions have been answered, the Show Score button will become enabled. When the Show Score button is clicked by the user, the question 10 of 10 label, as it will then read, will go away. Actually, its text property will simply change from what it was, question 10 of 10, to whippersnapper. Also, the 9-0 and Geezer labels will become visible again. The Show Score button will then be disabled, as it makes no sense to select it while the score is already showing. In the next step, we will add the code that makes all this happen.